Hi, guys. Welcome back to the podcast. Welcome back to the miniature mic monologue. The first thing I want to address is that I said I wouldn't sit in the seat next time, and then I did because, well, it has the best lighting, okay? I don't know everything, okay? And it's okay. Anyways, yeah, like I was saying, it was like, okay, well, it's funny that I ended up in the exact same spot. It probably doesn't even matter to you, but it matters to me because I'm like, why would I say that? And I didn't know what was gonna happen. But I do that a lot where I say things and I don't really know what's gonna happen or if it's gonna happen, and not just about something as insignificant as like where I'm sitting to record the podcast when I'm at home, but also as it relates to things in my life that I've believed for, that I've set my sights on, that I've had hope for because I heard from the Lord. And I have heard from the Lord about a lot of things in my life, about what the finished version of the promise would look like. And I have associated that with the current timeline I was living in, not necessarily with the God who sits outside of time and is infinite and can see my entire timeline. So, if that makes sense, what I'm trying to say is that I was looking at it through a perspective that was very limited. And I went and asked a God who was not limited. And so he gave me a not limited answer. And then I tried to put it back into my limited mindset, and found frustration in that, not seeing that my limited understanding of whatever he said did not match up with his unlimited version of it, you know? And that's cool. That's fine. That's great. You live and you learn. And I think that the reason I really wanted to do this episode talking about vulnerability is for a couple of reasons. One being that when you're seeing this, I'm back in LA right now, real time. I'm going back to LA in a day, like less than a day. We're leaving early tomorrow morning. And if you saw the All Things LA video I did in LA, the last one I did, I was believing that God would make a way so that I'd be able to stay where I was staying, and that did not happen. And I found somewhere else to stay that was cheaper. Everything ended on good terms at the other place with the landlord. I can't be more grateful for him and God throughout that entire experience. But I found somewhere else to go that's more affordable, except the only thing, I kind of hate talking about this, but this episode is about vulnerability. But the only thing I really was able to afford was to make the deposit, which is cool, except I have to make the rest of the payment tomorrow when I get there, which I don't have. And so I am having a hard time processing this, saying it out loud. And like, honestly, for me, at this point in my life, processing something like this that I've had to process so many times kind of equates to me not thinking about it, because if I think about it, I give room for my thoughts to begin to spiral in a direction that is not only not in alignment with the truth, but is also a distraction and a waste of my time and energy. However, it does not negate the fact that I feel as though I left LA hoping to not have to leave in the spot that I was in, to do exactly that, to return in what would appear not the same, but a similar circumstance. And it's just difficult for me. Like I am not super comfortable being vulnerable, period, because my family are an extremely trustworthy group of people, the people that I grew up around. And so I went around naively just handing out my trust, and had to learn in pretty non-consequential situations that I can't be doing that. And so what was a uninhibited form of trust and expression that I lived in as a child, and parts of my teenage years quickly turned into a panic inducing, constant head on a swivel inspection of those who surround me, evaluating them by the Spirit, trying to determine if I should even engage with this person. So I have a hard time disclosing anything to people that I haven't vetted for an extended period of time. You know what I'm saying? Or that I haven't been around, and then the Holy Spirit's been like, you can trust them, essentially. And that is exactly this, the podcast, my YouTube channel. I didn't even bring up what was happening with my living situation until a month, 2 months before I left that situation. And it had been happening for, honestly, 7 months prior. Also, like, the internet is not a place to share all of your business like that, just as a general rule of thumb. So part of it was just me being, pragmatic, trying not to do the silly thing and tell everybody my business or, look a certain way. But the other part of that has to do with vulnerability, so much for me, especially after I felt like I was so exposed when I was a kid, and people would say like, oh, you're really loud, or like, you're so energetic, or like, not energetic is not a negative thing, but they would make things that I loved about myself that my family never brought up. They just would like let me be. They made it who I was. And so I was like, well, I'm not going to do that around you anymore. Like, an example is my laugh. Everybody that knows of me, like, knows I have this big, boisterous laugh. But when I was in middle school, like really early on in the 6th grade, I think I stopped laughing out loud. I literally would just chuckle internally. And I made that choice because I was like, I do not want to be judged. Like, I was being judged for things that weren't even in my scope of reality or understanding about myself when I was younger. And so I was like, I am not opening myself up to another vulnerability. And then randomly one day in the 8th grade, I was like, I'm done doing that. And now all anybody says that meets me is like, oh my gosh, you're laughing, blah, blah, blah. And I knew it would be like that because that was one of the first decisions I made for myself about being seen. And I do not like being seen because I can't control the perception. And I have obviously grown to give less cares about that. I haven't really had a choice. Like when I was going to college, I had to let stuff go because so many other things were happening to me that I was having a very hard time processing on my own. And it's my first time really on my own at college that I was like, I could give two flying fladoodle sticks what you think about how I look right now. And I used to think that I would have to develop that like super hard edge, but that edge for me is not very hard because that's not who I am. I'm just like, okay, and like, it's natural for you to perceive me in a way that I don't agree with or is incorrect. And I used to think the only answer was the extreme, which I've talked about in other podcasts, and we'll probably talk about. Sorry, I really needed some water. And a deep breath. And I'll probably talk about in like various others, but my point is, I don't like to be seen unless I can see the eyes that are seeing me, because not everybody is for you. And sometimes you really don't need to let people see you. But otherwise, like me posting on YouTube, me posting on, or YouTube, yeah, the internet or whatever, has been me being like, okay, there's distance physically, but mentally that's been the hardest place for me to develop the distance about being vulnerable and being myself. And in the last year, especially on my YouTube channel, I think because of my podcast, honestly, I have become immensely more comfortable being who I am, like when I'm with my mom all the time on the internet, because I'm just like, I don't know, posting on a podcast like this has opened up a side of me that is just like, okay, you're going to see it anyways. So I'm like, what's the point? But I wanted to get on here and talk about this because I am almost 1,000% certain I am not the only person who thinks like this or tries to live their life in a way that they go around, guarding their heart. And I don't think there's something wrong with that to an extent. Like there is a biblical principle in that where I got it from. But I have been exposing myself to the idea of being seen this entire time. And over the last couple of months, like my platform on YouTube has grown and I'm like, okay, cool. Like I'm getting more regular viewers and stuff like that. And I began posting on like my Instagram and TikTok. So it's cool. I'm getting overwhelmingly positive feedback, which is cool because I have had to cap off what I do with what people say about me because you can't let it get to you when it's good or when it's bad. Like I'm just a prepared Patty. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes my Patty preparedness is it can be like not pessimism, but just exclusionary, exclusive. I don't know. It can just like wall stuff off. And I just am like trying to, in general, figure out what the F is going on with my life because I don't know. And I think that is just going to be my reality because I said yes to God when I was 14. I don't regret that, but I just would prefer. I would prefer to not have this level of what am I doing happening because like I said, I'm prepared Patty most of the time. However, I am not supposed to know what I'm doing. This is my first time living and this sounds like a little silly, but I was reading a book and in the book, the main character was talking about how like, you're sitting on the book, so I need to open it and see if I can find what she said. It's called The Neighbor Favor, making a book vlog about it. But what did she say? And it like really struck me. I don't know. I can't remember what it was, which makes me sad. She just, in general, has found this camaraderie. I am only 48 pages in, but I'm very much enjoying every second of what I'm reading right now. I'm in part 1 of the book, but she just kind of expressed to the other main character how she's thankful for having someone to share her imperfectness with. And I remember what it is. She is trying to be a child's book editor. That's what she's doing. And she's working this other job to kind of get her foot in the door for publishing. And she's continually going to interviews to be a child's book editor and getting rejected. And it's not like she's just getting rejected. They're rejections and they're not nice rejections from the way that she describes it. So it's hitting her harder, and it's hitting her harder because she cares about it. And it just made me think like how not normalized, I guess you could say, failing is in the process and how much it's not shown and how much it's talked about. And it was a very small thing, but it made me feel seen, not because I see myself or my life as a failure in any way, especially not the podcast or my YouTube channel. I decided when I was going to do it, I wasn't going to care about views. But it's been very hard for me to reconcile my obedience not resulting in any kind of reward in the timeline where I felt like I needed it most. But I was thinking to myself yesterday when I had a moment alone, and then I told my mom that I was looking back over everything that's happened over the last 7 months. And I was like, literally, in terms of my actual experience, I don't have anything to be upset at the Lord about. Like, there was no evidence that God wasn't with me, essentially, in my last situation, even though emotionally it was tumultuous. I never went without literally anything. So if I look back on it logically, or not even logically, like just literally looking back at the facts, I should be jumping up and down with joy. And I won't say jumping up and down, because I think it's natural when you've heard something from the Lord to have a longing for that thing to come to pass. And then when it's not that thing, it makes sense to be upset, but you have to keep moving on, because just because it isn't that thing now doesn't mean it won't be that thing in the end when it comes to whatever time God appoints. So yes, I think my perspective might be a little less hurt if I wasn't seemingly going into like the same situation right now, where I'm like, I don't have what I need to have in order to do the job that I need to do, and I don't have any inkling of if or where or how it's going to come about. So, that's worrisome. But, the Bible says, be anxious for nothing, but through prayer and supplication, make all your requests known to the Lord. Right in Psalms 23 talks about him laying you near still waters, and all of the things that the church kid in me knows for sure. But some things can only be learned through experience, and experience is life. However, oh yeah, and another thing to add to that, kind of like, I don't know how you expect me to do anything with the nothing. Like I'll be the sower, but I'm going to need the seed type deal, even though that's about giving. That scripture is about giving, right? I think. Anyways, if you guys didn't see on my YouTube channel, I got a new car, and I was not planning on getting a new car. I wasn't thinking about that. My mom, however, could not stop talking about planning on me getting a new car. And then when we went to the dealership, because my mom was like, we're going to look, I was like, okay, because here I am, seedless. Like, I can't buy that. I can't, this is not a good plan. It just kind of got laid out like, yeah, sure, this should work out 100%. However you need it done, we can do it for you, said the people at the car dealership. And I know you're like, Jiana, that's what they say at car dealerships. That's how they get you to sell cars. No, bro, I'm not spiritually deaf. I know when it's like a, come on, let me schmooze you, versus this seems like someone came here before me and prepared a place, right? Because I was not. And I mean, even while we were there, I literally thought to myself, can we just leave? We are not gonna buy a car. And 2 hours later, I was signing the dadgum papers for my credit check and got approved. And I was like, what? Hello? That's another thing where I'm like, so I have to pay that, I don't have the form of payment. Pray for me. But my mom was very worried about me driving my Fiat, because I had a hole in the engine and it was leaking, and I have to drive a lot for my line of work, multiple days in a row, and the car is brand spanking new. Like, I just got over 200 miles on it today. I've had it for like 5 days. I don't know. The point is, I'm trying to be a little more vulnerable, and I'm doing my best, okay? So hopefully someone else who feels similarly to me will be encouraged to be just a little more vulnerable, if not in this way, because it doesn't have to be this way, but, with yourself or with the Lord, or with, someone that you trust, or someone that you don't know if you trust yet, and just let what happens happen. you know, sincerely, your hyper independent only child, 23-year-old, over intellectualizing baddie. You know, I wouldn't say it's over. I would say it's an appropriate amount. The emotions have substantially evened out in the last year or so. So I wouldn't say it's over. But, okay, so let me say that again. Sincerely, your hyper independent, analytically driven, discerningly skeptical, wise as a serpent, harmless as a dove, only child, baddie. I like that one. That was a lot, and I like it. I'm gonna go. This was good. This was good for me. Cathartic. Anyways, if you want a book recommendation, go read Don't You Forget About Me by Vari McFarlane. I'm talking about that in my upcoming book vlog. It's not out, and it won't be out by the time that this is out, but be on the lookout for that. There's a trigger warning that you should probably look up just in case, but that book. Just had to mention it. And the neighbor favor that you guys are sitting on also, it's looking like it's gonna be pretty good. Some things have yet to develop, obviously, because I'm really early on in the book. This is not the book vlog. That's it. Okay, love you. Pray for me. I pray for you. Bye.